Hello and welcome to KennyRoy.com. I'm Kenny Roy. This is the Ask Video Mail for the week of November 14th, 2011. Welcome to the site, to the new members, and welcome back to the old. Don't forget, the Ask Video Mail is your chance to get your question in character animation or performance answered in a video just like this one. So, if you want your question answered in a video, I need it, so you have to send it to me. The address to send those questions to is webmaster@kennyroy.com, and I promise I go through all the questions and I answer the ones that I hope will help the most people. So it's been a crazy week. My son, Liam Alexander Roy, was born last Tuesday. So actually he was born in the middle of the night, so it was on Wednesday actually, November 9th. He's healthy. My wife and I were very happy, so welcome Liam to the world, and I'm super stoked about that. I'm really happy to be a dad. I've dreamt of this moment, and it's really fulfilling. So I'm just super stoked, but obviously a little tired, and there's a lot of new responsibility that comes with having a baby. So I'm just trying to juggle it all and kind of take it in stride. So that's where I am. And CTN is this week. It starts on Friday. I will be at CTN at 11 a.m. at the Animation Mentor booth answering some questions. I will also be roaming around during the day. I don't like to spend too much time, as you can imagine, away from my house these days. I'm just excited about having a baby boy. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be there all 3 days, but definitely on Friday. And then maybe I'll pop in on Saturday or Sunday. So definitely come by, pick up a card. There's a promo code on the card that will get even the currently subscribed members a free month on the site. So you can just check out the site if you want for an extra month for free on me. And the referral contest is still going. There's only a few days left. There's still a very low number to beat. If you want that free book, How to Cheat in Maya 2012, all you have to do is refer the most people before Friday, and I will send it your way. So check that out. There's a video on the main portal and inside the member portal on how to participate in the referral contest, so check that out. Let's get to the question. It's a recurring theme in animation, especially in 3D animation, of course, so I thought it would be a good one to answer this week. Let's check it out. So here we go. So the old FK-IK debate. I know this question doesn't really ask, like, oh, which one should I be using at each time? But I think it's a good way to launch into the explanation of how I like to animate both FK and IK arms to get the most, natural results and whatever. Typically, we use IK arms whenever we want to do physical interaction, and whenever we want to be sure that the arc of our arms is under total control. So that has application in a lot of acting shots as well. But it's impossible to do really physical work with FK arms, okay? So for instance, if it's a character dancing, okay, dancing like with a partner, whatever, you would definitely do IK arms with that. Now you might constrain the IK arms in a certain way, but there would be no way that you could actually, have those hands, around the other person and, actually working and actually ranging correctly with FK. You'd just have all these penetrations, and you'd have to animate it basically on ones, and then you'd introduce crazy chatter on those limbs. Also, other forms of physical animation would be contact, where the hand is contacting a object that is immovable. So something like the hand grabbing onto a ledge, putting the hand on the wall, anything where the hand has to stay still. Obviously, you just set that key, and then you don't put any more keys on it, and the hand stays still. Very easy, and I know you guys know all this stuff. But in the acting application, it comes down to workflow and a personal choice. So I'm going to relate this back to workflow for you guys right now. You get arcs easier from FK arms. Why? Because it rotates from the shoulder, and it rotates from the elbow, and then it rotates from the wrist. Meaning you get basically sweeping rotational movement. And rotational movement is in an arc by definition. It moves in a circle. You're rotating around the cuff right here, right? Or rotating around the elbow right here, right? So you get an arc. So by definition, you get arcs introduced into your scene with those FK arms. But with IK arms, if you're paying closer attention, you can get much more control over your arcs than you can with FK. Because the thing with FK is, unless you have a knack for being able to key kind of straightforward with your FK, you're constantly going in between two different poses. Let's say like one like this and like one like this. You're constantly doing in-betweening between two like major poses, and to get the exact arc you want, it's very corrective. And by that I mean like you are kind of like, at least me, I find that you have to like go forward, fix it, make a breakdown, go back, like split the difference in the keys, make a breakdown, whatever. So if you want the character to have like a really like sweeping arc like that, like something like really like calligraphy almost. Or let's say the character was drawing. That's a good example. All right, let's say the character was drawing like an S shape. You might have like a pose right here and like a pose at the end, which is the you know, basically the end pose of that. But you're basically trying to like build these poses and get the FK working with you, because it doesn't work with you just like right off the bat. It can be very finicky. So you're doing some shoulder movement, some elbow movement, some wrist movement. It can be very, very, very labor intensive to keep on going back and forth and splitting the difference on those controls and adding keys to make this very fluid. Whereas with IK, you can take the hand and you can literally, using just like the rotation on the wrist and the translation of the hand. Now this wasn't the most, you know, beautiful version of it, but then it's just a little bit of cleanup of your curves and making sure the elbow pole vector, you know, is part of, you know, part of this whole setup. You haven't forgotten about it, and you can get some really, really detailed effects on your curves or your arcs in your composition. Okay. So I thought I would just like open up a scene and just show you kind of just like a few examples of what I'm talking about here. Okay, so here we have Bloke again. Oh, good old Bloke. One thing that's nice about most rigs is that the FK and IK systems are, you know, riding one on top of another. So you can actually animate one. Here's the FK hand kind of overlapping and extending. And then here's the IK hand kind of overlapping and extending. Okay. So just one thing I wanted to point out by doing this was that the overall rotation, that wide arc that you get from rotating a shoulder, is very prevalent. And what you can do to your IK performance to kind of emulate that is to make it so that you are kind of watching the performance or the motion in the shoulder in the big controls a little bit closer than you normally would in order to get your IK arms to look like FK. And by the way, I interpret the question to kind of mean, how do we get the IK arms to have those natural wide arcs that just come for free with FK arms? That's kind of how I interpret the question. Maybe it meant something different. But that's how I interpret it, and that's how I think basically you should approach FK and IK arms. So your workflow should dictate what choices you've made in your rig setup are you going to use FK arms or are you going to use IK arms? So, so back to the work. So we have basically a large controller that is dictating wide arcs on screen. But when we go to IK, as you can see, it doesn't really feel the same. I kind of tried to just really quickly slap together the same kind of motion. And so just one thing that I think is important is to get the motion, the translation of the wrist itself kind of a little bit more extended. See this? See how the wrist control, when it's extended, almost looks like it's an FK shoulder control? Okay, so that being the case, what's nice is, well, let me put it this way. If I start moving this control sort of a little bit more at arm's length, we'll get that wide arc back, okay? So it's almost like working in FK gives you wider arcs than you would normally add to your animation. And so maybe that's another thing that you need to start thinking about in your workflow, is are my arcs, you know, nice and wide? Or am I only really getting nice wide arcs in my animation when I animate with FK in my arms, and I'm just not paying attention to that? See, that's a very easy workflow fix to do. Then you just need to say, okay, if I need FK for those really detailed arcs on my hands, well, then I need to key it like so. So the next thing is that when you rotate an FK control, especially the shoulder, the ramp up in speed on that rotation curve, so if it goes from a flat tangent, is a little bit more drastic to me than the ramp up on the translation, because the translation is in one direction kind of, and the rotation is kind of in two directions. It's kind of like X and Y, while at the same time like rotating the whole arm. So what I mean by that is, like, if I just go like this, then this is not really where the arm would be if it was rotating, right? Because it's kind of just stretching out. So what I mean by that, so what I want to point out is that as the arm starts moving, we definitely want to kind of emulate a little bit more of that arc where the arm is staying a little bit more at arm's length. Okay? You see that? You see how now it looks like the shoulder is actually starting this move a little bit, okay? And now it kind of stalls out, but to me that's probably a little bit more because the hand isn't far out enough, isn't ranged enough. And I'm probably just rotating it too much right here as well. Let's just get this arc just a little bit wider, okay? And right here, definitely, we're getting basically no feeling of that nice, you know, rotation in the shoulder. Just extend this out a little bit. So as you know, of course, you can see I'm animating straight ahead. No big deal. And this can all be corrected later. And so what we're just paying very close attention to is, are we getting the kind of, you know, kind of ranging that makes the FK so nice. Okay, so the rotation controls need to be just tamed a little bit. Okay, let's just tone down all of this rotation. Let's just make it a little bit. Okay, now our translation. Probably could use a little bit of work here. Let me just flatten these out and just do a little bit of smoothing. This definitely looks like it's not. There we go. And if you're afraid of working in a straight ahead fashion, don't worry about it. It's not like you need to work every single one of your in-betweens straight ahead, like on each control. You can definitely do full body posing with FK, or sorry, with IK arms. So I wouldn't recommend, for instance, starting with this pose, and just imagining what this pose, halfway would be. I think you do not need to see it a little bit in motion, but it's not like I'm saying this is the only way to work it. So this really just needs to be smoothed out, okay? But as much as just imagine with me that the first version that we saw of this, basically it had a lot of because this was moving in Z, the control was moving in Z, so we had like a lot of crunching up right in here instead of really looking like the shoulder is starting this motion, okay? So let's go back to the FK and you'll see what I'm talking about. It really looks like the motion is started in the shoulder. It looks like it's driving the car here. See that? Right from the beginning, that shoulder looks like it's rotating out, and it is. That's how it works. Okay, so let's do one more, and I'll do like the figure eight, not the figure eight, but like the S shape little test that I was talking about. Let's just make a NURBS curve here. This is going to represent our S shape. So again, you might set a key where this guy is like pointing at it. But as you start working with your controls here, something very interesting really quickly pops up. I'm going to set keys on all these. Which is that if you're going to start building in like overlap, then you're doing a lot of like correction. So like I want him to be kind of like swishing his brush. And then he gets down here. And I guess this overlaps upwards like this. Actually, he should probably lead this with his elbow a little bit. Oops, I just set that key in the same frame. My bad. Okay. So then he gets down here. But you probably should lead this with his elbow a little bit. But I don't want his wrist to be that far behind. And then across like this, another swish, but definitely led with his elbow a lot more. And then his hand can flatten out, but I also want it to still be overlapping. See, you see what I was talking about? What ends up happening is I'm going into this and just doing a lot of correction. So I would have to split the difference right here because I'm not ready for that hand to start taking that corner. So I want it to be facing upwards still. And then right here as well, I want it to look like he's doing like a nice swish with his hand. All right, so that's the way with FK that we would get started. Now, let's make this a little bit smaller, a little bit closer to him so I can actually touch the darn thing. Okay. Now with IK, you'll notice immediately, you can actually do it almost straight ahead. Just doing something just, kind of straight ahead here. In fact, you could actually probably get away with attaching this to a motion path. But let's not go there. And then we can just do the rotations. So imagine he's holding up a brush, right? And actually, let's just close his hand so that it actually looks like he's holding a brush, okay? If we can put a brush in his hand, why not? It'll take 1 second. Okay. So let's just fix the rotations. So he's dragging it. a bit of rotation down here. And then he's bringing it across. Really bending this down. Oops. Now let's just do a little bit more so you can see what I'm talking about in terms of the rotation on this hand, kind of going to be so much easier to manage because it's not, I don't have to do any correction or correcting with the shoulder. All right. And voila, he's going to do a little flip at the end. And now let's just make the pole vector a part of the party. Now what I like to do is I like to select the pole vector. And actually I do this with a lot of objects. So see this pole vector, it doesn't have any keys on it. But I know that all the keys that I want to have it match up with are on this hand. So what I'll do is I'll just select the object that I want to put the keys on, shift select the old object, and as long as I'm sure that I don't mind there being a key on every channel, on every frame that is on here, I just hit S to set key, and then period puts me forward a key. So I just do that over and over like this. Now, check that out, my pole vector shares all the similar keyframes with my arm. So I can just go to the first frame and do what I said is flying the pole vector, meaning pull it a little bit away from the body so that when it does crunch up, it's less likely to flip out on you. And now I'm just going to hit period to go forward a key. And I know that all of my all the keyframes that the elbow pole vector is going to be on, it's going to be working. Another thing I can do is see how I've brought it down here. This is where it's about to cross underneath, so that the arm can kind of like go across and be led by the elbow in this section. What I might do is I might just shift drag or middle click drag and hit S to set a key, and then I know that it's starting from the position. But I don't have to guess at what key it needs to be. So I'll do this kind of a couple times in a row. Elbows down here. All right, so the hand is too close, but that doesn't matter. We're just imagining that this is being done kind of independent of the body right now. And then the elbow comes back out and is leading the action back over to the left. And then nice and high, and voila, it drops down one more time. Okay, so again, not the most beautiful animation in the world, but as you can see, this arc that I really want on my hand, with just a little bit of cleanup on top of this, I would be able to get a much more detailed performance out of my character. So those would be the circumstances, those would be the ways that I would animate an IK arm to look a lot more like IK. I would just be careful about ranging that IK and making it look like the shoulder is actually driving the, driving the arm. At the same time, though, take advantage of what IK gives you, which is more control over your arcs with less like corrective work. It's nicer to go into your scene or into like a session of working, of animating with a clear plan of what you'd like to see, not like I'm going to put this in and then I'm going to correct it and push it back towards what I want. It would just drive me mad if I had to do this S shape with FK arms. That would never work. I would never do it. So it's just more fun to just work towards something that you want instead of throw it in and then fix all day, okay? So great stuff, good question. Thank you for sending it in. Please send in more questions. If you want to take advantage of the site and get the most out of your subscription, the Ask Video Mail is the way to do it. So send your questions to webmaster@kennyroy.com. I promise I answer all the questions that I hope will help the most people. There's no such thing as a dumb question, so send one in if you haven't already. I'll see you guys at CTN. Come up to me, try to find one of my people I'm going to have walking around handing out the cards with the promo code. Good luck with your animation, and as always, rock on.